Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Ingrid Honkala, and she's going to tell us about her near-death experience. Hi, Ingrid.
Hi, Peggy. Thank you for having me here. It's such an honor and a blessing to be here with you and your audience.
Thank you. So start wherever you like and take as long as you like.
Okay, thank you. Yes, this whole thing, I would just say that my path of awakening and spirituality started when I was very young. And it all started with a near-death experience, Peggy, when I was close to 3 years old. And what happened back then, I was born and grew up in Bogota, Colombia, where I lived with my parents and my sisters. And my parents will go to work and will leave us at the care of a maid. And she was this lady that when my parents were not around, she didn't pay attention to us. And then one morning, that particular morning, my oldest sister, she was close to 4. And I decided, let's go play in the patio in the house. And the problem with this patio is that there was a big tank. And the purpose of this tank was to collect water for hand washing clothes. And it was this tank held about 900 gallons of water. So it was a big tank. And we saw a ball and decided, let's play cash across the tank. Just the thing that we shouldn't do. And then we climbed the tank because it was big, and she sat on the surface that is used for scrubbing clothes. And so she was a little safer. I went to the other side, and I was like leaning very precariously in this tank. But at that age, it's all about having fun. So my sister grabbed the ball, she threw it, and she didn't apply enough force. And what happened is that when I leaned forward to try to grab the ball, it rolled on the surface of the water, and I lost my balance and fell in the tank. So imagine, Peggy, the first thing I felt, people have the misconception that because I'm from Colombia, I come from hot weather country, but I was born high up in the Andes. So the water in this tank was very cold. I would just say 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So the first feeling was like, this water being frigid cold. And after that, it was that sense of like, why I cannot breathe. I had never been underwater. I never been in a pool. I didn't know you fall into water, you drown. And now I am in this state of horror, terror, why I cannot breathe. And being so desperate, in just a blink, I went from that state of complete horror to, and I didn't know what happened, Peggy, but it was that I don't need to get out of the tank. I don't need to run. I don't need to escape. I don't need to breathe. And I was in peace, and I was in serenity and calmness and well-being and joy. And then the first thing that happened right there is I saw a light. And this light came from below. And the most incredible thing about this light coming there is that this tank was entirely made of cement, and it had a roof. So the space in the tank was very dark. And the last thing I saw when my eyes opened was the darkness of the space. And the moment this light comes, it's like, oh, now there is light. And the light was able to illuminate the whole watery surrounding. And then I just started to see bubbles. And these bubbles were surrounded by light. And it was so much fun. And I decided, let's chase these bubbles. And by turning around when chasing the bubbles is that I saw a body suspended in the water. And at that moment, it was that immediate like clarity realization that is my body. And there was another incredible thing that happened. I through all this experience, I mentioned a lot the word of contrast. because another thing I experienced right before I drowned was my heart beating really hard in my chest. And I could hear it in my head like boom, boom, boom. And when the calmness and the silence and the serenity came, it was like, there is not more noise. And for years, Peggy, even after my NDE, I craved that silence. I wanted to be in closets under the bed, hiding, and it was like I wanted that silence back because it came with that sense of complete peace and serenity. And it comes the next contrast. Now imagine I am like in this absolute well-being, and I see my body, and I was born as a very sick child. And I spent almost the first 3 years of my life feeling unwell. I didn't even know what was to feel well, that I was always sick. And now that I am in this state of complete well-being, I look at that body and I'm like, oh no, I'm not going back there. And I left the body behind. And the moment I turned around after I left the body, I started to see flowers. And these flowers were blooming from nowhere. This was a majestic scene. And then now I was picked up by the flowers and I was being carried. And I said, it's like going back to the womb where you don't have to do anything. You're just being done. And I'm just relaxing there, just like, oh. And then when I'm in this just state of bliss, in just a flash like that, I appear in the maid's room. And I'm looking at her from above, and she's listening to soap operas in the radio. And I said, oh, that's Maria. But Maria was completely unaware of what was happening. And then like that, in another blink, I appear in my mom's path. My mom, like I mentioned, left very early and she didn't have a car. She was walking. She had to cross the entire neighborhood. It took her like about 10 minutes to get to her bus stop. And she was nearly there. And when I appeared, like again, like floating above her, Peggy, this is the thing that everybody like, wow, anybody. And is that the moment I said, oh, that's mom, she stopped. And this is also the amazing thing that validates this whole experience, is that my mom, at that very moment, she had an incredible intuition. And at that moment, she listened to that intuition. And she turned around and started to run back home. And I looked at her from up there and I'm like, oh, she's running. And then the moment that I changed my point of view, I see a dog at the end of the road, and I love animals. So the moment I feel the desire to be with the dog, I am with the dog. I'm like, whoa, what just happened? And then I turn again my view and I see a park. And at that very moment, I feel that desire, I am in the park. And I thought, this is so cool. And I started to play a game of just going places. And while I'm playing this game, is like, imagine the sense of time and space as we know it disappear. And in another flash, just like that, I went from playing this game to being a realm that was made of pure, bright, intense, shiny light. And at that moment is, Peggy, the first time in almost my 3 years of life as Ingrid that I felt I am at home. And it's that sense of being home, like you're being welcome. It's like, oh, this feels so incredibly good. Again, that sense of familiarity. And although I had seen my body in the water, up to this point, I didn't have that absolute clarity, that knowing that that was not truly who I was. And at this moment, I realized myself as a being of light. I said, I am not that. And I was still having that sense of self, but I was sensing like if I was just dissolving with the whole. And this sense went even farther when I experienced what I call nothingness. Some call it sense of non-self or emptiness. For me, it was that nothing, because it was nothing I knew. I said it's like if we are like a little box in the middle of a stadium, and all you knew was that little box, and now you become whole. It's like, so it was expansion, wholeness, totality, and really nothing I could really describe with words. The only thing I could say about this state of being is the state of absolute presence and consciousness. And when I am experiencing this pure state, the other amazing thing, exactly where to go in the house. And we live in a big house, and she could have wasted time going other rooms. I would have definitely died for sure. And my mom went to the back, and my sister was still there, and she was trying to get me. And she looked at my mom crying and said, Ingrid is there and I cannot get her. Imagine the scare. My mom jumped in the tank. She got me out. She said like I was like a raggedy doll, like no pulse, no breathing. I was all pale, blue lips, blue hands. And then she started to do everything she knew. And look at the synchronicities and the perfection of life. My mom was a teacher. She worked with children, and she had been trained to do CPR for children. So she knew what to do, and she started to do everything she knew. And I was so disconnected from this body, from this reality, that I didn't feel anything she was doing. I'm just there being in bliss. And then suddenly I felt that I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. And it was the sense of like I was being pulled, I was being vacuumed, and like a fall, and there's nothing I could do to stop this. But it was the sense of like, no, I don't want it. And then now I was back in the body, and I knew I was back because that sense of freedom, the sense now of being cold, of being sick, of being kind of trapped in the body, all that happened. And Peggy, I was very angry. I was very unhappy. I'm like, I don't want to be here. And I put the analogy. Imagine it's like if you're like in an amusement park when you bring your child to the park, and at the end we have to go. You're like, they will cry. I don't want to go. That's what happened. I just did not want to be here. And things went really difficult for us because I refused to eat. I just felt it was that sense of I didn't want to stay, and I didn't belong. And when I came back, things happened. I came with a state of awareness that I didn't have before. And how we can know that? Because people say you were such a little child. How can you even say this? And I said, no, because it was clear. When I was looking at my parents, it was the sense these are not just my parents. I felt them as my equal. And this is how I felt with the people around, and even later in my life. So I became very rebellious because I did not want to be conditioned. It's like, what are you talking? What are you saying? And this reflected in like me looking at other children and thinking, what is happening to that people? They don't know anything. So I couldn't relate with them. And I look at my body and I said, I'm not just this child. I'm not this. I'm more than this. So now I stopped feeling like I was a child. So it was very hard. and hard for my parents to understand, because back then, imagine early 70s, there was not any concept about this. And on top of that, I started to have skills that I didn't have before. So there was not really explanation to what was happening. And these skills is, like I said, I was just about to be 3. And not long after my experience, I could read, I could write, I could resolve mathematical problems, I could put together complex puzzles. It's like, what is happening to this child? And that continued. And later in school, it actually even became a problem, because first I was bored at school because I knew things, and there was no programs in a school that were designed for children like me. And for me, Peggy, was that sense of like, I'm not learning any of these, I'm just remembering. But when I was going through such a hard time, I said that the help that I needed came in the most incredibly beautiful way. And what happened is that right after my NDE, I started to have what we know today as out-of-body experiences. And then this is one thing I say to people, because they ask me, how is it possible that you remember this? You were so young. And I said, because for me, the experience never ended. It's like I said, for me, it's like the door never closed. And then, this is beautiful, Peggy, because years later, when I was able to integrate more my experience, understand, ask questions, is when I received this incredible message, is when I heard, Ingrid, of course there are no doors. It says, because I always say, it's like for me, the doors never close. And then the light answered to me, yeah, because there are no doors. The only reason we feel that there's presence of doors, or that we're close to know or to feel, or there's the veil, is because of, as we grow up, there's conditioning and there's beliefs and there's experiences that bring us to be fearful. Then we start creating or closing doors. But then for me, it's like that door never closed, because there was never one in the first place. So when I started to have these out-of-body experiences, it was going back to that realm of the light. And I would experience changes in colors, in movements, in frequencies, vibrations, things that I have never experienced in my physical reality. And then in one of these journeys, one day I was surrounded by starlight figures, and they were shining in all different colors. And imagine, the amazing thing is that, because now I was experiencing that realm of the light, all this, and I wanted to be there, I wanted to sleep all the time. That became my favorite thing to do. And one day in one of these journeys, one of these starlight figures that was shining in gold shaped itself into a human form, and it touched me. And it's when I said, oh, you are a being of light. And that's why I started to call them beings of light. And then, of course, imagine Peggy could not be the child that is left forever, because now I was like, I just want to see these beings, and I wanted to sleep, and the balance needed to happen. So after that, a time passed, and one day I was taking a shower, and then right there in the bathroom, a blue, shining, intense light appeared, and I'm like, oh, now the beings of light are here. And it was that sense of like, home is here. And I started to feel like love and belonging and all these incredible things. And that sense of joy just brought me to now want to play with my sisters and integrate with other people and all these. But up to this point, these beings of light didn't say anything. I just could see them, I could feel them, I could even smell them. When they were around, I could smell flowers. And I would just say they're always around, but we're not always being able to feel them. And every time I did, it was just all these amazing feelings and the sense of love. Then I started to play, I started to feel better, but I was still throwing big tantrums because I didn't have the sense of attachment to my persona, especially to my name. And there was an evening when they were calling me to eat dinner and I wouldn't come. So the lady, we got a new maid, she came and she's like, Ingrid, we're calling you for dinner. And I turned and I said, don't call me like that. That is not my name. And she's like, then what is your name? And I said, I do not need one. And that night they sent me to bed. And then it's when, for the first time, I started to hear the voice of the beings of light. And it's when they said to me, it's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light. They said, as you already know. It was that sense of understanding and clarity and peace. Now I know why I don't need a name. But of course, later I understood, yes, in our human experience, names are needed and they're beautiful and their carry energetic value is all good. But at that moment, that was the reality I was experiencing. And then, but they also said to me that all the experiences I was having and the ones that I was going to have were not for me to keep. That someday I will be able to share. But they say for now you have to remain quiet because they're not going to understand. And yes, I already realized they're not understanding because every time I mention anything, it was like, you know how we're with children. Oh, what a great imagination, you're dreaming. Yes, and nobody really believes what you're saying. I'm like, they don't understand. And the other thing they said that was so beautiful, there's going to be people in your path to help you and to guide you. And we're always going to be. And that people couldn't understand. I just was thinking, but what is not to understand? That's the reality I was living. And I was like, why these people don't get it? But then, yeah, thankfully, the first person that was able to validate my experience, and that was so important, Peggy, because we need to be validated, was my mom. And the way this happens is because I started kindergarten, and then I started to paint beings of light everywhere. So I was told not to say anything, but not to paint. So painting beings of light everywhere. And the teacher was so curious, like, what is going on with this child? They already thought that I was kind of different because I was quiet. I was in my own space. And then she asked me, are those the sun, the stars? What is this here? And I said, no. These are my friends, the beings of light. And the teacher like, oh. And she thought I was having imaginary friends. So she's like, better call her parents. And then my mom came, my dad was out of town, my mom came, and then they started to look at all the drawings and everything. And it's when we also discovered that I could see auras, because all my paintings had the very clear, defined colors around, and then around people, objects, animals. And then my mom was like, So at some point, I just look at her, and I was so desperate for someone to believe me that I said, Mom, these are the colors that we wear, and these are my friends, the beings of light. And imagine making my mom make these big mom eyes, like, be quiet, because she didn't want me to be in trouble. And I'm like, just went quiet. And my mom said to the teacher, this is just a phase and nothing is happening. This is going to be resolved. And we left. And I was so sad. And on the way home is when my mom revealed to me, she said, I believe you. I said, really, mom? And she's like, yes, I believe you because I also can see things that others can't. So it's when she revealed to me that she could see what we call spirits. But now she validated what the beings of light said to me. She's like, but you have to be quiet. Because she had the experience growing up too. And she's like, no, nobody is going to want to listen or believe, or you will be in trouble. So I had to just follow what my mom was saying. And but the most important thing was being validated. And this is another incredible thing that happened. When I was 6 years old, I started to see what we call spirits. And up to that time, my mom and I, we thought we were seeing the same thing because I didn't know the difference. And then it's when I told my mom, no, mom, the spirits and the beings of light are not the same. And it was because the spirits caused me a lot of fear. And I said, not the beings of light, I felt love and I felt safe and I felt embraced. So it's when my mom say, explain, then explain with clarity what is it that you see. And my mom started to cry and she said, I think that you see angels. And it's when I said, Mom, but they cannot be angels because they don't have wings. So I now was very curious. And then my mom, for her, it's like they have to be angels. So she taught me some prayers and all that for our guardian angels and all that. But I went and asked the beings of light. I've been already talking with them for a while. And first I asked, what is with these spirits? And I call them dark spirits because they cause me fear, not because there was nothing wrong, but I just didn't understand. And they said something so beautiful, Peggy. They said, that you call spirits, you, us, in essence, we're all the same. The difference is the level of awareness that you have about who you truly are. And then after that, they said, I asked them, my mom said that you are angels. Is that what you are? And then they said to me something so amazing. They said, you can call us whatever you want. And it was the clarity that, like, we present to you and the way that you need us. It doesn't matter. And later in life, when I started to see what we call ascended masters and other beings, I asked, are you ascended masters? And the answer was the same. Remember, in essence, we're all the same. It all depends your state of clarity and connection with your true nature. And they also said to me, again, we appear to you in the way that you need us. So that's how amazing, compassionate, and giving is the universe to us. And the next person that appeared in my path, or that was there in my path to help me, was my grandmother, my father's mother. She grew up as Catholic. She was a very rebellious woman. And she always had this, like, wanting to know more. And this idea, there has to be more than just the teachings I'm receiving. I want to explore and go deeper. So she started to study all different philosophies. She joined an order called the Rosicrucian order. She wanted to go deeper into, we're more than this. And then she started to study Buddhism, Hinduism, Kabbalah, the chakra, all the different things that were out there. Then she came to our home she lived in Venezuela. So when she would come to visit, she will bring all these teachings. And I was like, oh, my grandma's the first person that talked like the beings of light that I knew. And then she taught me how to meditate when I was 8 years old. And she taught me the sound Om. And the very first time she taught me this, I woke up in the middle of the night with the Om, making the whole house vibrate. And from there, I just kept having more and more deep spiritual experiences. And by the age of 12, imagine, Peggy, I was so different from everybody else. So incredible. I would look at others and I didn't fit anywhere. So my grandmother became like my protector in that sense, because she will bring me to meet all these spiritual teachers, all these things. Look, my granddaughter. Like, she's just special. And then by the age of 12, I told my grandmother that I wanted to die. And she's like, she was all concerned, all scared. I'm like, yes, grandma, because I just don't find a place for me in this world. At school, I was being bullied. Imagine the kids, all the children my age didn't understand me. I was just felt I didn't belong. So she took me, she was very concerned, and she said, I'm going to bring you to a place where it's this beautiful place where I feel you can find peace. And just to give you a little more idea, before that, I have gone to church, I have talked to our priest, and I have told him about what I knew about God. And I said, stop fearing God, because fear is actually bringing you away from God. God is love. How can you be fearful from the one that loves you the most? And the priest got really mad, and he said, you don't know anything. You're just but a child. And they put me to just do all the rosaries and all the prayers. And so I was very confused, and I feel I don't belong here either. So when my grandmother said, I'm going to bring you to a place, she brought me to this little Buddhist temple, which was something unheard in Colombia. But she's like, this is a place where you will feel this peace. And she took me there, and it was a little house, and I met this monk, and he taught me this breathing meditation technique. And I sat there, and I'm like, wow, I felt that peace. I felt at home. And then at the end of the whole practice, I said to the monk, my grandma's a very busy woman. I don't think we can come back to the temple. And it's when he said to me, you don't need to come back to the temple, because you already have a temple. And I said, what do you mean that I have a temple? And he said, you are the temple. So wherever you are, you can bring this breathing, this meditation technique with you. Oh, Peggy, you don't imagine what that did for me. It was that sense of like, no matter where I am safe, I'm home, I'm protected. And it's when later in life, I also understood with all these the meaning of home. And it was that realization, yeah, home is not a place, it's a state of being. And then from that point on, like I learned transcendental meditation. I started to learn all kind of different meditation techniques, ways to calm the mind, teachings. And by the age of 9, I was already reading books like the Bhagavad Gita, books on self-realization, books on discernment. And so I have this thirst for knowledge. And while everybody else, or say for wisdom, while everybody else was playing and having all kind of different fun doing other things, the children and their own age, but everybody is just distracted doing their thing. All I wanted to do was to be enlightened. So imagine how different I was from other people. So yes, it wasn't until later when I joined college that I decided, you know what, and my sisters were now dating, and there was the parties and everything out there. I'm like, it was this sense of I need to belong. It was this sense of, okay, now I really need to be part of this world. And is when just other decisions came in my life, and started to become a scientist and all these other things. So maybe I leave it here for now. If you have any questions.
What is your PhD in?
My PhD is in marine sciences with emphasis in biological oceanography. So I am an oceanographer. And I love you ask this question because usually people ask me, Peggy, like, how's it possible that you became a marine biologist, a marine scientist, if you drown? You should be like so fearful of water.
Oh.
And I said, actually, the opposite. Because what happened in my experience is that I didn't stay at the level of the trauma. What happened, and what I say, people, for me, drowning brought me to see the light. So for me, water became the place, water became this symbol, like going deeper. And I became also a scuba diver. And it was always this sense of how can I go and explore deeper. And that's how I became with everything, with science, with reading, with life itself. It's like, let's go explore and know everything is there.
I drowned when I was 5, so I really attached to your story as you were talking.
Oh, wow, Peggy. Yes. Oh my, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yes. So you understand.
Yeah, I understand mine was all out of body, and my 25-year-old NDE was the tunnel and the heaven experience. But my 5-year-old drowning, yeah, I completely understand you're here and then you're there, and then you're there, and then you're there. And I had no knowledge of my resuscitation either. I just woke up coughing up water down my brother's back. I mean, that's what resuscitated me, was being carried upside down. You know, he threw my body over his shoulder, was carrying my dead body home, and I started coughing up water, and that's when I was back. But
wow, I love to know that, yeah, we have, and that you understand, because it's like when people ask me, but you didn't feel anything when they were trying, and I said, no, I was already just in the spirit realm, in the realm of the light, like having just experiencing bliss. So nothing.
yeah, and I went from the fish knocking, I was in a pond, so the fish was knocking me around. My body just was like driftwood, it was just moving. So still in my body, even though the muddy water of the pond had turned a light transparent green. And, there was a change there. And like you, like, oh, I can breathe, I'm fine. And you felt real good where I was struggling and coughing and choking before. And then with mine, I just drifted up to the top of the water, and there was a guidance there. It's like, I just knew these things, like, you want to stay below or you want to go above? I thought, I want to go above. Well, I don't want to go too high above. I want to take it slow. I'm so afraid of heights, even though I'm dead, and then I heard these voices, speak and tell me things. And so, yeah, so you're sitting there, I'm thinking, this is so weird as you're talking about that part before you went to heaven. I assume I don't know if you call it heaven, but where you were with beings of light. And just that out of body and being a kid, just wanting to play.
Yes, being playful and joyful. And isn't it, Peggy, how just all these layers fall, and it's just that sense of freedom. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing. It's just absolute joy. Is an incredible, I guess, and having the possibility, now that you talk about being a child, and how this happened with that state of pureness of our heart. Later in time, when I asked the beings of light why my near death happened when I was so young, and the answer was beautiful. They said to me, because you were old enough to remember, but young enough not to be conditioned yet. So look at the beauty of experiences like yours, like mine, is that place where I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know anything. And I am just in the pureness of the experience without my mind creating any layers of anything. You just having I would just say, is the experience as it is, without any add-ons, just pure.
Yeah. And I wanted to go back to the pond My family went on up ahead. My mom's sister was walking ahead. My brother says, Mom, she's, I was throwing up down his back. This guy put her down now. And my mom turned and looked like, she's alive. But then they just went up to the house and they just put me down the road and left me there. And I thought, I want to go back. I know drowning hurts really bad, but I thought, I'm not going to fight this time. And I want to go back because I want to go back playing. I want to go back doing what I was. That was fun.
Yes, yes.
And I got a knowing during my drowning that my family didn't love me. Like, oh, I didn't know that. And so now here I'm back and I have this knowledge, like, and my family just proved it. I mean, yeah, my mom was like, sorry, relief, I wasn't dead, but I mean, there was no, oh, thank God, or anything, or carrying me. I'm so sick. I still have that pond water in my belly and I'm so weak. And they left me there. And so I have this, that was true. My family don't love me. Why would I walk up that hill to that family when I could just go back to the pond? And so when I took a step, I thought, I made a decision. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go back and do that. And I knew my family wouldn't understand, like, where did she go? But I felt it was my right somehow. And I'm 5,
Yeah.
and we do what we want, and we shouldn't have this. I felt like I had this knowledge I shouldn't have, but I had it. I was different. I was changed. And just as I took a step forward to go to the pond, this female voice that spoke to me during my drowning, I now see her. She now appears as this woman made of light, and she's hovering above the road. And it's like I see this flowing white dress. I see like a shape, almost like an icicle. Like you say a woman made out of icicle. Something
Yes,
carved.
yes.
And she's hovering, and she says, "No, don't." And I said, they don't love me. And she said, well, you'll have a lot of love someday. And I said, well, where will I find it? And she pointed right towards this town. And ironically, it's where I met my husband.
No.
But so yeah, so I went on back up to the house, but I just identify with you so much, which is so hard to find anybody in this world you can identify with that drowned when they were as a child and had that out of body, just playing around and coming back and feeling you don't fit. And you said something like you didn't want to eat. I never thought about that. Is that why I didn't want to eat? I don't know. I was like this little Ethiopian child when I was a kid. I was so skinny and my belly stuck out like you see on TV, the starving kids. And my parents I threw up all the time. And my parents finally took me to the hospital and they said I had a nervous stomach. That's what they called it. So, I don't know, something from the pond water messed me up, or is this like a failure to thrive? Like I didn't want to be here because I was so different. I knew from the first time I walked into school, I was different. And I knew it from then on. You are not like anybody else.
Yes, it gives me the chills. Like you say, when we find someone we align with in such a similar experience, because when I didn't eat, I was like you say, a child that it seemed like I was starving because I wouldn't eat. And my mom took me to the doctor got mad at my mom because the doctor thought my mom was not feeding me, that it was on abuse. But my other sisters were all like doing perfectly well. And he's like, no, this child is not wanting to eat. And I think it's what you mentioned, Peggy, I knew we have the inner knowing that the body needs nourishment, and that if we don't feed the body, is going to at some point not being able to survive. And I although we know that there's gurus and masters, but that's people already that awaken that can live without eating food. But when we're conditioned in the environment says that we need to eat in order to survive, then we are conditioned to that. And I knew it was that sense, if I don't eat, I can live. I can leave this world and go back there, like you said, to the amusement, like the pond, having fun. Because it was, for me, it was similar. I was born in a family. My parents were forced to marry, so there was not love there. We just happened. And it was always the sense of suffering. Oh my God, another child. And it was not that my mom didn't love us, but she was in a lot of suffering and pain, because she was in a marriage that there was no love. It was just arranged, and it was difficulties, and it was just, my mom was very depressed and she cried a lot, and it was like, it was always the sense of we were not loved, and I just was experiencing that sense too. So it was like, what is here for me? What is here? And it was very, very difficult times to, in all senses, like you saying, feeling you don't belong, and on top of that, feeling that the world around is not accepting you.
Yeah. And I was like you in the 70s. Nobody talked about these things. And my Christian grandmother, she was so adamant about things like that, or the devil, anything that come up. Not that, but I forgot mine drowning within a few days. There was an episode where my family went fishing a few days after that. And I remember an event there, but I forgot everything about all of it. I just pushed it away because, you can't speak. I couldn't speak of it. And I wasn't painting like you for somebody to say, hey, what's that? But when I was 25 and I had my second NDE, which was the tunnel in the heaven experience, about a month later or so, I was sitting out in the night, out in the wet grass, looking at the night sky and the stars. And I was just like, I had a lot of stress in my life. I was just releasing it. And I looked up in the stars and just kind of got that lost feeling that you're just part of the sky. And something triggered, I don't know why, but all of a sudden it's like this big movie screen opened up that I just was suddenly seeing my drowning. It was just released on me. And when it was done, because like it took me over, I was like, I snapped back, like something just grabbed a hold of me. And I just like went back and I'm like, did I drown when I was little? So I went to my mom. I was like, did I drown when I was? And then the only questions I had was, did I drown when I was little? And how did you find me? Which started then the conversation. Yeah, you did. And why we didn't talk about it and et cetera. And then bits and pieces start coming back. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. And and then it took decades before I started speaking.
Yes, it takes, the similarities that are incredible, because you say your second NDE happened when you were 25. My second one happened when I was 24.
Wow.
Yes, and again, it was to bring the validation that when I mentioned that when you die, there is no pain, there is no suffering, there is not. And my second NDE was a motorcycle accident. And even before the accident happened, I was already out of the body, standing in the middle of the road, and I was feeling that sense of home again. And there was no pain, there was no fear, there was no anxiety, there was nothing, Peggy. Just, again, spaciousness and love and peace and calmness. And I think this happens to us like this because we just meant to bring these messages. And like you say, because some people come to me and say, I want to have a near-death experience, and I say, no, you don't. It takes so many years to integrate. And us being children, when it happened to us being so little, is very hard, because then now you feel rejected, you feel you don't belong, you don't want to be in this world. It's very difficult. And I said to people, just better learn from us that had the experience. And you can, by quieting your mind, by opening yourself to deeper truths, by starting to connect with your inner wisdom, your inner guidance, all of that, then you can get there. It's a different path, but it's a path that doesn't involve the body getting hurt or having to integrate or having to go through trauma, and none of that. So
your second one was different than your first? You were in this space and of calmness. Yes. And
the second one was different, Peggy, also in the sense that in the first one, although I was so little, I had so much awareness. In the second one, I didn't realize that I had died. I was in this motorcycle accident. I fell, and I was with somebody that was at the back in the bike, but this person jumped before the bike fell.
And you were driving it?
I was driving it. And I was afraid because I was new driving bikes and I was in a hill. And I didn't even want to go, but my friend, take me home, stop being a chicken. And, like, oh, okay, I take you. And then I just lost control of the bike and it fell, and I didn't have a helmet. And when the bike fell, I hit the head so hard, of course, with the road. But Peggy's just like that. Even before I fell, I was already feeling peace and this whole incredible, amazing state of being. And then someone arrived to the accident at the scene and picked me up. And it's when I realized I can see light everywhere, but I cannot see this person. And I said, why? Somewhere I feel now the sense of someone is touching the body, but I cannot see. And then it's when I touch my face and do this, I realize I cannot see my hands. And it's when everything turned dark. And I said, I cannot see, I am blind. So they rushed me to the hospital, and I lost my vision because my head hit so hard the ground. And then later, when the doctor came to the room, my friend was there, and the doctor said that I lost my vision the moment I hit the ground, that the optic nerve probably just cut at that moment. And I started to see little by little, like tunnel vision, and I started to recover my vision. And I said to the doctor, but it's not possible that I was blind the moment I fell, because I was standing in the middle of the road and I could see light. There was light everywhere. And my friend said, no, Ingrid, is not possible, because the place where the accident happened, one, it was at night, and two, there was no lights in the road. It was pitch black. And then he said, and by the way, you never stood up. So it's when
So that was your spirit.
yes. And that have seen the light with the eyes of the soul. So this is another amazing validation. Like, it's not these eyes, physical eyes. It was seeing light with the eyes of the soul. And I don't know how more time we have, but if we have time, I wanted to share with you an experience I just had recently, which I could call as my turning experience.
Yeah, we have time. I just wanted to say before I forget, I think that people say, oh, how did you remember this? You're so little. Even, people have these birth NDEs. And I have a theory that because we remember this from our soul, not in our brain. We weren't in our brain. We were in our soul. And on that side, in that realm, in our spirit, is perfect. It's so highly intelligent that we are remembering from there, not from this brain that has to grow and mature and age and collect memories and make sense of them. Because as I grew up, I kept having these flashbacks of all these things I can tell you all about now, but at the time I would think, that doesn't make sense. How was I above this pond? Or how do I have this memory of, because the fishing thing, and later at Sundays, there was the fish when my dad took us fishing after the drowning. And then there was experience at Sunday school where I was singing Jesus Loves Me over and over. And then suddenly I am in the picture I was coloring. Here's Jesus and sitting on the rock and these children, just like I was in the picture that I was coloring. But I got so worked up singing Jesus Loves Me that I was now in the picture. And I am physically standing in front of Jesus, who is physically right there looking at me and this rock and these children. And I couldn't wait for my turn to sit on Jesus' lap. And a voice come to me and said, Jesus loves children of every color. Never forget that. And this memory would come. And I'm like, what is that? Huh? This makes no sense. I can't tell people that I was coloring a picture of Jesus and the children and suddenly I was in it. I can't tell people that.
Yes.
But then here I am as an old woman was like, oh, I'll tell you 100 times a day, because I know that was real. Because in that realm, in God's realm, everything's possible. So I just wanted to say that for people like, how could she remember 3 years old? You know, how could she remember a 5? Well, that's how, because we're not remembering with our brain. Like our soul is still in us. Yeah, we got this brain, but we got this whole other, like they said, there's no doors.
I love, and thank you for bringing this, Peggy. That's beautiful. Yes, yes, because this mind is so limited. Actually, even like we're talking, it takes for the mind years to integrate, because the mind say that our soul is enormous and our mind is just this little only bit, and it has to filter this. And maybe it happened to you too, that the way to filter and to understand is like later, oh, you see other recounts, other experience. Oh, yeah, that's what happened. Oh, I get to understand. Yes, that's what I experienced, because otherwise the mind cannot make sense of it.
Yeah. And when you talked about, I forget the word used for it, where you're becoming all with one, in your experience, you were like, I thought of the word dissipating, because when I was writing my book and I got to the writing very clear and focused detail on the, what exactly everything I saw and experienced, all of a sudden I sat back and put my hands back from typing. I'm like, I remember that feeling of dissipating.
Yeah, I call it dissolve, but it's the same things. Yeah, you're just like becoming part of the
But
whole.
see, I wasn't happy with it because I'm an adult remembering it. And I felt like I needed to grab onto the table, like, don't evaporate. I was feeling it so strong. Like, oh, I don't like that because I'm in a body. I don't want to do, it's like going to grab, dissipate. That scared me as I remembered it all those years later, a feeling of dissipating.
I love that word. It's a beautiful word. And because, yes, what happened is that now that we're more settled in the mind is more rigid, and then now we have the sense of identity, more form. Is like, oh no, of course it's not going to want to go anywhere.
Yeah, our body's like this can we're stuffed in. And then
Yes,
when you're out of it and you're going here, you're going there, and then you go through this, and then it's like somebody else is guiding this and controlling it. But yet we have some freedom and it's strange. But that dissipating, I call it, is a whole different thing.
I love that. Oh, I love this conversation, Peggy. This is so beautiful. You know what? One night, as you call the body like being a can. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was so huge, so huge, so enormous that I couldn't even fit in the whole room. And then I heard the words grandioso. Just enormous, and how like, and that's what I felt in my first near-death experience, was like I knew I was back in the body, because I was vacuumed back into this little, I just imagine like, yeah, getting into a bottle, like
The
no.
first time I told my story, I was at an IONS group in Columbus, Ohio, and I talked about the pond and hovering over the pond. I was there. I wasn't just telling it. I was like telling it from hovering over the pond. And then I went in talking about the 25-year-old NDE and the tunnel and being the bright white. Then I'm in the bright, like I was the light, and I felt this big
Yes.
and huge, like light, like I was, and there was like no fear, no stumbling over words. Everything was perfect. I didn't have to worry. What am I going to say next? Something took over, and I was
Yes,
hooked on that feeling after that.
that's very beautiful, because that's when we realize, and for me it's like that, is when I said I'm not doing anything, I'm just a vehicle
Yeah.
for the light.
And it
And
just coming through.
yes,
And
and when you step out of
it,
the way, yes,
you
I
just
said
sit back and let it do its thing.
yes, yes, it's like a step out of the way. And
But yeah, go ahead. Tell me your next story. I just had to like, before I forget.
I know, I love it. Thank you for sharing. This is beautiful. I want to share is like this is something that happened recently, so I haven't shared with many people yet, and I would just, I probably this is among the very few first interviews when I'm sharing these, but it was in July, a couple of months ago. I had a car accident, and then I had a surgery, and I had what I would call my third near-death experience.
Okay.
And what happened was that, but this is so incredible, because before the car accident, about a week before, 5 days before the car accident, one night I went to bed and I was feeling so worried, like a sense of dread, like an immense, overwhelming worry. I didn't know what was happening because there was no reason for it. And because I am an empath, I thought maybe someone is in trouble and I'm just feeling this. And then I just tried to calm, and it just nothing. I went to sleep and I barely could sleep. At 3 in the morning, I am awake and I am like almost having tachycardia. That's how much anxiety I had. And then I just closed my eyes and I started to do a practice I do. I'm like, can I be with this? Just be with what is. And at that moment, I just kind of like enter in a little space, or create just a little space. And I heard the voice of the divine, the voice of God, the voice of divine consciousness. It said to me, do you trust me? And at that moment, it was that, imagine the sense of, who can you really trust? Someone that gives you that sense of embrace,
Right. The ultimate
love and all of that. Pegi, and I said, yes, I do. And the moment I say yes, and I do, everything was gone. No worry, no anxiety.
Oh, I think I just lost internet.
Connection for a moment.
Oh, there you are. Okay. It's my internet.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Sorry. It's my internet's messing up for some reason.
It's okay. And at that moment, I just surrendered to the whole thing. And again, I entered into that space of openness and peace and quiet and silence and all the things we have described, and love. And it's when I heard the words, you are in sync, like synchronized, you are in sync with God. No, I cannot even describe what I experienced. It was like just absolute love. And then next day, I am still in that sense of oneness and connection and openness and alignment. And the first thing I felt doing, I didn't even sleep for the rest of the night, I would just go water the plants. And I watered the plants, and when I looked at my hands, I'm like, these are the hands of the Creator. And I felt that for all of us, I felt like we're all this like incredible life force, the divine force, God, that allow us to be here and do what we do and have all these experiences. And then 5 days after all this happened, I had a car accident. But remember the words, do you trust me? And then in the car accident, we were with my husband. He was driving and he was about to turn into our neighborhood. So he had to reduce the speed, of course. And at that moment, a car hit us from the back. And he just was saying, he's not stopping, he's not stopping. I didn't know what was happening. And when it hit us so hard, this guy was doing like around 65. My husband, he's an amazing driver. He put the wheel straight, or it would have just made us spin around. And he put the wheel straight, the car hit us, and the car flew because there was a ditch. And it went, I don't know how many yards. And then we ended up in the ditch next to the trees. So we didn't hit the trees. Everything was just at the same time amazing because it was a row of trees and we didn't hit them. Now I'm sitting there in the passenger seat and I'm like, the seat belt held me so hard, Pegi, that I felt I was in fire. And my chest and my belly was hurting so bad. And we didn't know what happened. My husband went out of the car and everybody's angry, cursing. We had other cars coming behind. Everybody stopped. And what we learned is that everybody thought this guy was drunk. So people were keeping distance because they thought he's driving so erratically. And then everybody stopped and everybody's angry, cursing, confused. All that is happening. The guy stopped ahead. He had a big pickup truck. And then he started to come out of his car. And I'm sitting there in pain and listening to all this is happening. And then I started to feel absolute compassion. It was compassion for the confusion, compassion for the anger, compassion for the person that hit it, compassion. And I say to people, I wasn't thinking compassion. I was the embodiment of compassion. I couldn't even, like we were talking about the mind, even the mind couldn't understand what was happening. How is this possible? She can be in this state when the car just got destroyed. And the guy came out of his truck. It was like his pickup truck, and he's walking towards us, and I'm pouring this compassion. And then we learned later that he fell asleep in the wheel, and what woke him up was hitting us. And then now the ambulance came, everything, and then I was asked to be taken to the hospital. I didn't want to go. I felt that I was going to be okay. Then I went home, and the next day I ended up in the hospital because I was in a lot of pain. And then what happened after they did all the tests, and it was just inflammation. But what this brought was I had been having problems because my uterus was already like how you call it, like endometriosis, that is just too thick, and I've been having big problems with that. But for a long time I was told that I needed a hysterectomy, and I just didn't want to do it. After the accident, I started to have this big bleeding, and I was bleeding for 15 days. Then I had to go to the gynecologist. I finally said, this is not good, this is dangerous. And then we decided to go do surgery. And this is when things happen. And the beautiful thing, the incredible thing, Peggy, is that I was guided to the right doctor. Because I kept changing doctor. I didn't want the surgery, so I want a second opinion. And then finally I was guided to this doctor. And the reason I was guided there is because this doctor was open to listen. And when the day of the surgery, I told her, you have to monitor my blood pressure. It's like I knew, Peggy, I knew that something was going to happen. And I said, you have to monitor my blood pressure because I am very sensitive to general anesthesia. And I said, you have to monitor. And then she listened. And I said, you have to keep me in the hospital. And then the anesthesiologist listened too. And when I went to get the surgery, everything was going good. And suddenly my blood pressure dropped. And then it's like, because they were paying attention, they knew they did what they had to do, and it dropped so dramatically, I entered into hypothermia. And then later, when I woke up in the recovery room, I was wrapped in this blanket because my body couldn't heat itself, so it was like a heating blanket. And then I started to shake, and now I went into high blood pressure and tachycardia. My body was all over the place. And this is what happened at the level of the body. But what happened in a deeper sense was that, Peggy, this was the first time that I was asked if I wanted to stay, or I wanted to go.
Yeah.
Because in my other two experiences, it was just like, they just happened, I was back. And this is the first time I was asked. And it was like in these two sentences, you want to stay or you want to go, a lot of time happened. And when I heard you want to stay, it was like if I was in heaven, in the, like, but it was like, I would just say it was like when you feel you're in a 10-diamond resort. Of course, you're so feeling so good. You don't want to come back. And then it came, or do you want to stay? And when I heard this, like in between these two sentences, I stop and I say, wait a minute. And the sentence ended. I said, is this a test? And I said, because if God is everything and God is everywhere, so where is here and where is there? I said, if God is everything, then there is not here and there is not there. So I said, keep me where I can serve God the most. And then this is where I am now. And it was, again, it take time to integrate these things. I wasn't planning to, I was thinking I need time, and I probably will not share this for a while, and he's gonna receive the message, if not now, when? I think the world is needing all these. Again, I love you having a channel and that you're sharing and that we're sharing, because we all need these messages of hope and love and connection and all of
Seems
that.
very important right now, more than ever, I think.
Yes, yes. And maybe I can share one last thing to not make it too long, but when I asked the beings of light why my near-death experience happened, the first one when I was a little child, because it's just being so little, it's like, why just that right there? And listening also to your story, I want to bring these because they said the purpose of your first near-death experience was to bring the message of the power of connection. And I just was like, what do you mean? And they said, look what happened throughout your experiences. That experience, when you saw your body, what was your first reaction? I don't want to go back to it. And then it's when they said to me, that was your ego mind thinking, I don't like that body, I don't feel well, I don't want to come back. But they said there was a bigger plan, that there was a bigger plan for you, Peggy, and all of us. It's like, so they said, reason why you went to look for the maid and you went to look for your mom. I'm like, oh, dang it. Like, really? And then you said, but yes, look what happened. When you went to look, I know, then I said this other thing. I said, okay, if I was planning to come back, then why did I waste time going to the maid room? Why didn't I go directly to my mom? And they said, that's the point. That's where we want to show you contrast. They said, look what happened when you went to look for the maid. No connection. There was no love there. Nothing happened. What happened when you went to look for your mom? She could hear you. And what is this revealing and showing to us? That love doesn't have barriers. When there's unconditional love, there's no here, there's not there. That is what just happened in my last experience. It's like complete and total connection. And that's why your mom was able, they said, look, the person that was the farthest was the person that rescued. The person that was close in just few yards could not even know what was happening. And then with this maid, they said, look at what happened when there is no connection, because this person also mistreated us. So there was nothing there. They said, when there is no connection, they let you drown. When there is no connection, there is war, there is separation, there is division. So it's just this clarity, this message of how can we, and now us having these experiences, bring all these messages of again of love and connection and clarity and the hope that it brings to us to know that we are eternal beings, that there is not death, and that we're more connected than we think we are. And lastly, like too, with your own experience, we are the light. We are the light.
That's what I love about getting older and having had NDEs and these experiences is those aha moments to get that clarity and those insights that put these question marks, like these pieces of puzzle, these holes in the puzzle. And it's like, oh, there, I get it now. I get that. Just like, the memory of like, oh, that because it was in our soul, not our brain. Like,
Yeah.
get that before. And just when those things come, like, oh, I'll constantly tell my husband, I'll stop the remote on the TV. It's like, I just got it. I just got this, that, this connects to that. And when I was 17, I think it was my senior year, I was going to quit school one day. I was being bullied and I just had enough of everything. And I went in and I slammed, it could have been the end of my junior year. I don't know, when I was 16, but I went in and I slammed the books down at my guidance counselor's desk and I'm like, I quit. And he said, I know you've had to move around schools a lot and make new friends is hard. And he says, I'm just going to leave you alone for a while. It's the best thing he could have done. I know what you're talking about. You just need to be alone in that, get in that space. And he turned off the light, which was so helpful because just instant calming to me when lights are dim. And he put the out to lunch sign on his door and he left. And all of a sudden, I saw this like kaleidoscope. I saw these patterns and these shapes and this thing is forming. And all these memories started coming in of every time someone was nice to me, which was few and far between, but they were all coming. And it was just like creating this beauty, like it was changing my mind. Like it was altering my mind and I could watch it. It was beautiful. And it was like this flower evolving and blooming and moving in and out. And all these memories with it. And then I was left with, that's my role model. Every little time a person was nice to me through my life, I can see it all right there. That's my role model. That's who I want to be. I don't want to be like these mean people and these bullies and this. I want to be like those people that just saw this kid that nobody else saw and took time out and looked kind to me. The nice thing the bus driver said one time, this guy was digging a ditch. I was walking along the sidewalk when I was a kid, stopped and had a conversation. He was so nice to me. He did these little things. Like, that's who I want to be. And so I was ready to go again. Like I knew at least what I wanted to be in life was just a nice person that took time out when everybody else was looking at somebody like they're garbage to see the beauty in them. And it was like weird. Like I just see my mind just moving. And when you said that, this clarity, and that is my biggest love as in my older age is those moments where you just start, oh, I get it. Because we can get in that, like you were that night where the whole weight of the world was on you and you had all this stress, like this doom and gloom and just something bad's going to happen. And we just lose that hope. And then when we get that hope, it's like, I just got to hang on to this. And, talking about, these NDEs, that we're all talking now. We have the internet. I'm able to talk to people all over the world right here from my living room, Long Bottom, Ohio, and where nobody wants to hear this stuff around here. They think this is the devil at their church is telling them that.
Yeah.
But I can't help but wonder if, I heard this phrase somewhere and it stuck with me, for such a time as this, that we aren't all able to bring out these messages of our NDEs and these spiritual experiences for such a time as this. And the only thing I feel upon my heart as to why, and I don't want to scare anybody. I'm not psychic. I don't have visions but I just feel upon my heart that something's going to happen and all of us are going to be faced with death. And these experiences hopefully have already fed a lot of people, millions of people throughout the world with hope that what you see coming isn't it. Because when we step out of that body, what we're telling you is there, what we have experienced on the other side. So wait for that and think about that. And even, you're in a car wreck next week and you're laying there on the road like, crap, remember the NDEs. Remember that you were being carried by flowers.
Yes, I love what you're saying, because when I had these last experiences, when God said to me, do you trust me? So look at how beautiful it's amazing what you're sharing right now, because even when I was in the car in the middle of that accident, the car is destroyed, I am in pain, I am in this place of love and compassion. And that's what happened when we trust, when we surrender, when we align with God. But the place to get there is through all these, we're able to share this knowledge so people can know where they will be at when these things happen. And incredibly in the car, it was the sense like, look, when you are with God, when you're aligned with God, nothing really is happening. It's all how your mind wants to create a narrative of things.
Yeah.
Everything in reality is neutral, but you put the value. And if at that moment your decision is to be at peace, then you are at peace. And if you choose to be angry, and if you choose to be, then that's how you're going to drive the chemistry of your body, your emotions, your mind, and everything else. And this is the other beautiful thing that you like, the way you're saying it, Peggy, is that when we are aligned, things just go easy. It's like you're not against the current. And even after that accident, and you going to think, oh, now the insurance and this and the problem and all that, in that place of alignment, the answers come with fluidity, and then everything got resolved so easy. We even discovered that we had this car insurance that we didn't even know we had, and that will replace completely the car, and we could get a new one and even a better model. So it's like, when you are aligned, you tap at that place of clarity, understanding. And the being so light said, when you understand, you love, because there's no resistance. And when you love, it's just openness. And when this openness happens, you let go.
One time I was praying, I heard God say, follow God like a leaf follows the wind. All my job was to trust. And I have to remind myself of that sometimes when everything feels real chaotic and I get worried. I'm thinking worst case scenario and everything. And I'm just going down in this dark pit. And then I remember, just follow God like a leaf follows the wind. All I have to do is trust. And it just like,
yes, it's so beautiful. And it comes again, the word that you say, how did you use it? I said dissolve, you say, when you dissolve,
we dissipate.
Dissipate. Yeah, you just, I remember when I was little, 5 years old, and the being so light said to me, trust. And they said, just let yourself rest calmly in the hands of the divine. But I didn't even understand what they're talking about. What is trust thing? And I was so rebellious, so resistant. And that resistance, it just paid off, because there was many years of difficulties and challenges and sufferings. Not that I don't have challenges now, we all do, but it's different. Now you are able to, like you just said, Peggy, to stop, to remember God, to remember that trust, and it's like you get the head out of the water faster.
Yeah. It's like we have that brain, that head, and then we have this alternative that is light and peace and harmony. And nothing can get to us, even death.
Yes.
Nothing.
It's when we realize, it's when we actually have even that clarity. Only the body we leave behind, but we don't die. We're life itself. So it's just now we go to that place of having that clarity. This is just a costume. This is just, and of course, the time we have it, we respect it, we love it, we take care of it, but now we continue. So it's like the being so light said to me, what you call Ingrid, what we call Peggy, is just a parenthesis in the eternity that you are.
Yeah. And like that light being became physical and touched you. You know, I feel like God is as close to us as we want him to be, or as far away. And, you know, sometimes I would just like put out my hand. I was like, God, just grab my hand because whatever's going on. And it just that, it's like, it's there that quick. And it's not that God wasn't that close, it's that I wasn't that close. I was in the darkness.
I love that you just said this. I love it, love it. It's beautiful because it's like, and it's written in all over the scriptures, ask and it will be given. Like it's like you said, it's always there. Like people say, how you summon the beings of light, or how they summon you. Like, that's not summon nothing. The light of consciousness, the divine light, God, all the beings are always here. Always, always here. Us, we're the ones that we have to, when I put the example, we are like a radio. You have to learn to tune your dial, to put your dial and your antenna in the right place. And then now you're connected with everything. I said, at this very moment, all the waves of TV, radio, internet, everything is here right now. But I have to have the correct dial, the antenna, the correct device, everything to be able to connect with that. So I love that you just say what you say.
One of my guests, Carlos, he was drowning in the ocean and the tide kept pulling him back out. He could not get back in. He was deep under the water. And he was like, God, just take me. And he heard God's voice say, ask, like ask for help. And he's like, I can't ask for help. This is helpless. There's nothing. And God was like, ask. And it kept getting louder. And so he's like, okay, I asked for help. A dolphin came and lifted him up out of the ocean. A boat came and saw him hanging on this dolphin tail. And they got pictures of it on video of him hanging on this dolphin tail. And they rescued him. And he said, take me to the church. I don't care what church it is, the nearest church. I guess a miracle just happened. And he's the sweetest guy. And that stuck with me is ask. So many times we get in this, and, you know, I've even had prayers in, you know, in my past, and God, I know this is hopeless. I can't see any way this getting fixed. I give it to you because I can't fix this. And I ask, and then it will be fixed in the strangest ways, unimaginable, that I would never thought that would ever happen.
Yes, it's when we say God works in mysterious ways, just because the mind cannot get it. It's like the mind is so limited and it's just thinking impossibilities when everything is possible.
Yeah, I mean, he's a creator of the heavens and earth. We think he can't fix this.
Yeah, something that for us is so big is like, oh, come on. It's just,
and you know, the fact you and I are sitting here talking and we were both dead. We both drowned as we were children. Then we're still here. And then we died again. We're still here. And then we died again. We had a small little OBE. I was sick last year, January. And it was just tiny little OBE. I passed out and hit the floor in the bathroom. Suddenly I was out of my body. I was between my body and the wall in the bathroom. And something you said made me think of it, because what your last one is, because like you got to get back in, or something you said. It was like I had a choice then on that. It was like I heard people talking, and it was like they're real close together. And like there was like this big party, like the voices, it just sounds so close. Like I almost picture it, what I was hearing. And then this one woman's voice seemed real close to me. And I felt like she was talking to me. I guess, huh? What? What are you saying? What are you saying? And I had awareness. I was on the bathroom floor. I was out of my body. I was between my body and I knew where I was. But yet I knew I was having this experience. And I knew heaven was just right there for the taking. But then somehow something like a smarter self of me is like, if you want to go back, you need to stop listening to her and listen to your husband. Because in the distance, my husband was saying, baby, baby. He's trying to get me to come too. And I thought, like, curiosity kills the cat. Like, if I go with this party and this woman, it's done. And so I started focusing on him. My eyes kept fluttering, and he kept shaking me, come back. And so the next day I waited and went to the hospital, and I was like severely dehydrated. I've been sick for days, for like 4 days. I lost like 13 pounds, and I was like really sick. I had a bacterial infection and all this. But that night I really felt I had that choice. And I never felt that before. Because the second one, I was demanding to come back to raise my boys. I had 3 little boys at home, and the answer was no. It was my time, is what I was. It is your time. The answer is no. And I pled my case and all this stuff. And then I was back in that wheelchair, and I'm like, oh my gosh, just give me my life back. And it was my time. And then still, like I say, it took decades for I started talking about it. And then even longer to realize the impact, like so many women die, like so many kids drown. I mean, I think that's like the top death of children, cause of death is drowning.
Yeah.
And then, you were revived CPR. I mean, if your mom hadn't known CPR, she hadn't been a teacher, if she hadn't heard you spiritually to turn around and come home, all these things, I asked my mom later, how did you find me? Because I didn't see them looking for me. I was out jumping around doing things. And she said, I thought about that after you brought it up. And she says, I remember now. She says, when I noticed you weren't there, she asked my brother where he saw me last. And he kept diving down until he finally found me. So who knows how long I was underwater? I don't know about you either. Like how long? And
we don't know.
And then we both, we didn't want to eat. We were these starving little things. So it's been very interesting. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Oh gosh, I love you inviting me, and this has been an incredible conversation, Peggy. I love knowing you more, and oh gosh, I feel the beautiful connection.
Yes. Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with, or you have a website or a book?
Oh yes, I have a website, ingridhonkala.com. I am also like all the media pages. I have a YouTube channel also with Ingrid Honkala PhD, and I wrote a book called A Brightly Guided Life: How a Scientist Learned to Hear Her Inner Wisdom. So the beautiful thing about the book is that it just starts with the near death, but it's like all the troubles, all the challenges, all that happened after. So it's like to show with people with clarity how long it takes to integrate our experiences in life and how much we can learn from all of it. Because again, right after the NDE were all these OBEs, and then I started to have visions when I was 4, and access to past life experiences when I was 17, and everything else that came. So it's like, it's just telling all these stories. And there was a moment, just to end with the book, I felt that it was egotistic to write this book because it was an autobiography. It was my story. And it's when the beings of light said to me, Ingrid, this is nothing to do with you and everything you can do for others. Yes. So, oh gosh. So again, Peggy, thank you for sharing, because all this is what can we do for others to have access to all these and understand deeper and going deeper within, and knowing each one of us is the guru, the master of our own temple. And we have this temple, and we're all the light, and we're all connected. And if we want it, in sync with God.
Yes.
And we're never, ever alone. Like you experience it in the pond with this beautiful, we can call it angel, being of light, whatever people want to call, but we're never, ever alone. Never. Right. I only think we are sometimes. Yes. Because the mind again, isn't it? Like the mind, they're like, you're not alone, blah, blah. And we know, no, we're not. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.